Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and it's my continuing mission to give you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullshit. And today's moral testing title is Tyranny from Obsidian Entertainment and published by Paradox. Now, Tyranny tells a story about what would happen to a world if evil won. It's basically what happens if Cobra Commander took the kid gloves off and stopped fighting with Destro. The bad guys got their shit together and boom, they'd be winners. Now, this isometric RPG is out November 10th on the PC for a suggested price of $44 US. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Tyranny. Fear and Loathing in Fantasy Vegas, Sparta Magic User Style, and Werewolves and Warhammers version 2.0 awesome. And graphics are up first. You know, in a world of fully 3D adventures like Skyrim and other massive RPGs, Tyranny and these kind of isometric RPGs continue to be sort of a palette cleanser, where Pillars of Eternity seem to stretch that imagination on the amount of colors that a single monitor could even display with its massive spells and sometimes mystically over-the-top monstrosities of levels. Tyranny does the same thing, but somehow comes out completely different artistically than Pillars did before it. With a crunchy, almost caustically rustic element to its environments, there's this nostalgic and lived-in feel here that really reflects the fiction of a world far past the war of good and evil, where the regimented forces of badness have now taken hold. And I really love that dichotomy. It's not anarchy and bloodshed evil, it's life with a dictator evil, where enjoying your existence is possible, but at a pretty unique cost. From the blasted battlegrounds where an edict, think laws with a physical repercussion, smashed down and melded warrior with world, to the lofty heights of wizard spires with clouds floating beneath them. There is an almost dizzying array of mystical and magical archetypes here, and for the most part, it's delivered with the expected Obsidian excellence that Pillars offered before it. And just like games before it, particle effects abound. There's also environmental layered sands tearing across the tops of forgotten military forts and multi-projectile fireballs spitting bits of burning something as they slam into the frying pan ready armor of enemies, who are then pretty much superheated to the point of being able to cook eggs on their helms. Also, some of the animation work here is insanely good. It's stellar. Take combo moves. Now, these are moves where you and a comrade in your party basically unleash the suffering on enemies in amazing form. For example, Verse, which is a character, drops down for a perfect martial arts leg sweep, sending an opponent to their back, and then you rear up and thunderstroke them so hard in the groin that their requisite atoms sometimes just say, fuck it, and pretty much explode. And this is very cool stuff, and all of the characters have it. Now, that doesn't mean I love everything. Sometimes we still get the requisite isometric pop, where levels don't really slide in smoothly, despite being able to get 120 frames per second at 1440p on a GTX 1080, and installed on an SSD. Also, there are some animation bugs, like when a cutscene moment ends, and sometimes the characters just figure skate the hell away from you, like they're so happy they lived through the meeting that they ignored gravity for a second. Or when combo moves forget to start, leaving you and your partner in a perpetual I really have to poop kind of animation stall. Now, quibbles aside, Tyranny builds on that over-the-top aesthetic that Pillars has. While not really outdoing it, it firmly digs its own place in comfortably right next to that title. As a package, really damn spectacular. Sound, music, and voice.
Right.
In the Blade Grave, the Stone Sea, and Haven each, there lies at least one artifact that can aid such an aura.
I'll tear your skeleton out by your ass!
Now, what I find curious, edicts can flex a little. Or so my studies suggest this is the case. Take the Edict of Storms. While the day it was proclaimed was the most violent, the actual radius of the storm has changed over time.
And of course, sound is up first in this trilogy of audio awesome, and it's actually very good for the most part, but it has a couple issues. For example, they have the incredibly deep earth-building thump of your superhuman fist slamming into the earth that knocks everyone down around you, or the nice sizzle of enemies on fire as they sort of panic, screaming and waving their arms around. That's all actually done really well. Sadly, there are also a number of little bugs when it comes to the environmental layering, and while towns, villages, and most locations have this busy atmosphere to them, sometimes ambient sounds are noticeably missing, like the whale slam of a hammer against steel at a forge that plays this strange now you hear me, now you can't kind of game with your sound card. Or the times where for reasons unknown miss and hit sounds aren't played and your warrior swings his weapon and it's like everyone is just sitting there stunned as neither a hit nor a miss sound is played, lending this weird odd pause audibly to everything that's going on. It is good sound, but the number of issues with some sound prompts is noticeable and is pretty random. Now, that was tested on 2 different machines with different hardware. And of course, that brings us to music. Now, surprisingly, in a game starring basically a fantasy version of Judge Dredd, gleefully skipping through the game world, adjudicating situations with a gavel replaced by a big-ass sword, you would have thought the game world's music would have followed a more somber note. And while there are pieces here that tell audio tales of the lost innocence of a location or sad stories of the death of kings, what you do notice is a slight levity to the music. Even tense and heavy moments are interrupted with the occasional change-up that keeps the score from really resting too heavily on the character's shoulders, like you're playing a damned video game version of Elric of Melonbony. Now, heavy use of strings and horns does keep the soundtrack epic, but small asides with a bit of experimentation in their instrument use allows for travel across the world to feel pretty varied. It doesn't matter if you're in the deep, almost threatening throb of a leader's courtroom, and I love that track, or perhaps visiting the home of a tribal leader. Each moment hits pretty perfectly. Now, that being said, I would have loved more switch-ups in some of the more placed locations, as sometimes these tracks repeat a bit often, and exploring some villages can drive a track or two deep down into your subconscious, and not in a good way. Pretty good music overall, with some excellent bits here and there. Voice. So while overly excellent from the mysteriously jovial for his life position Lantry to the foul-mouthed Verse who drops 4-letter words like a teenager who just discovered the word fuck, most of the voices are done well and tonally and situationally sound. However, there are a couple issues here, like this total tonal switch you get when a few characters join you. One in particular is a music singing magic user who started out with a spoiled brat attitude of someone who was basically born with the power to juicify people, and then, depending on the discussion, seesaws wildly afterwards. Now, I'm not sure if they were trying to show innocence masked by bravado, but in one conversation I damn near thought to myself, this chick is actually acting this way on purpose, only to realize, nope, she's probably just going through the worst case of puberty known to man. Very odd switches sometimes. As a whole package, I'd say the voice is good, just a couple letdowns. Gameplay. So as always, a little bit about story. You basically start out the game as a fate binder. This is a man or woman who's been given the ability to pass down judgments from the current overlord Kairos and their physical representation in the land, Tunin, and are traveling the lands trying to keep the local leaders, 2 almost dynamically opposed bad guys, working together to further the evil lord's decisions. Graven Ash leads the Disfavored, which is an elite fighting force, and Narat leads the Scarlet Chorus. Think soccer hooligans, given weapons and basically pushed in the direction of the enemy. Now, as the fate binder, you're basically working for the government to pass laws and keep everyone in check, which sounds like a bad idea as I'm saying it, and before long you are mired in political blood feuds and warring factions. Now, what surprised me is the almost scary number of ways through this story. You can go it alone, you can side with one of the factions, which closes off locations, or opens new ones, depending on your choices. While doing so, you discover secrets, massive towers you can upgrade with all manner of improvements, and of course, a ton about the history of this world itself. Now, character creation itself at the start is basically you picking a different gender, doing some customization options like hair and body style, and then you go in and you pick what you were prior to becoming a fate binder, like a pit fighter or a mage or a criminal. Then you assign some primary and secondary skills, as well as some fleshing out of skills at the end with some freebie points. And then you pretty much start. Now, the game introduces you to various facets pretty quickly. One is the first, and that's the favor and wrath system when talking to people. People, groups, even locations can have a tracking system for decisions you have made, and as you incur more favor or wrath, special moves unlock connected to them. Treat a party member terribly, and maybe they'll end up unlocking a special skill that allows them to actually lift the party aloft into the air for healing, impervious to many of the attacks around you, sort of like they're trying to make sure that they really impress you. Or cause another to pound their fists into the ground in rage at your poor treatment of them. Or passives that it can affect many things. And yes, you can get both sides of the skills from characters. That means you can actually treat them poorly and treat them well, because in the end, favor and wrath aren't exactly opposites. Now, the leveling up and skill system here is a little bit different, so let me describe that because I can certainly see it bothering some people. Basically, what happens is you use a skill like, let's say, Subterfuge or Lore, and it bumps up your overall level until you've done it enough until your level goes up. At that point, you basically pick attributes which adjust those skills. So in the end, it means that killing doesn't necessarily raise anything. Turning somebody into number 54 gooey paste doesn't actually do anything. In fact, it's a culmination of the situation that does overall within the story. So when you level up, basically you see the stat system at work with every skill backed up by a primary and secondary attribute. Primary attributes give a 1.5 multiplier and secondary ones give a 0.5. So while might and finesse both adjust one-handed weapon use, might gives a larger bonus when you raise it. The nice thing is that so many skills and connections exist here that you always feel like you have this alley of advancement, either by raising a primary or secondary attribute to make changes that sort of rolls down to various skills, not one for one. And then you move on to talents. Now, these are standard expectations for this kind of thing, locked to party members' overall character types, but for you, as the Fatebinder, you have a much larger overall tree to choose from. And the repercussions here to make sure that no one's playing the same kind of character is actually very, very impressive. From the ability to augment normal moves with spell-like effects to various talents that keep the enemy guessing as you flit through the battlefield like no one else is there until you untie their soul from a mooring. Very cool use of talents here, and really, really flexible. And then there's combat. It ties it all together. All attacks are your accuracy with that particular weapon or skill against an enemy's defensive skill that pertains to the attack. Now, it's fairly easy stuff, but newcomers might want to check and sit in that character sheet and sort of bounce around those different attributes so they can see what affects what. While Pillars has some issues with micromanagement, and it's not gone here, there is a thing that I noticed, and that's the way the HUD works to inform you with little counters that slowly decrease before whatever move is planned occurs, and I felt like the micromanagement was a bit lessened because of that. Additionally, the AI is much better here with taking care of itself, and some characters have stances you can choose which cause them to focus on particular actions, which in turn combine with the normal AI settings you have, and that means that the party wipes that we may have experienced with Pillars don't seem to happen as much here. I actually liked that. You can see special moves and bursting pillars of gore and fire at every turn, regardless if you've chosen to do it or if they have, and that's a very nice surprise. And it's all topped off with a very in-depth spell creation system that allows you to take different sigils you find around the game world and make your own spells out of them. And of course, what is a game like this without the requisite different difficulties? And as you go higher, the harder difficulties will definitely see you having to make far more intelligent choices, because the enemy, it has really intelligent use of things like status penalties and enemy choice, and you can actually get wiped pretty quickly there. Honestly, for me, the highest difficulty always seem poised for folks that think headbutting a concrete wall for hours is fun, but whatever, it's there. Normal and hard were good enough for me. Now, while adventuring, the crux of the story is based around your special power, which is your ability to hand down decisions and judgments, and you'll have folks who want you to pass judgments and are afraid of you doing so, and also a manner of assorted in-betweens. My hat's off to these folks as I started to go, oh Jesus, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to want me to decide who gets the fisherman's wife after a late night rubbing. But that's actually not what happened. Instead, the writing shines through with varied decisions from minuscule to epic in their impact on people's lives. Where Pillars had this ability to read folks' souls, Tyranny has you making decisions with cold hard rules and calculations, laws, and requirements. And this makes me feel like they're fantastically extraordinary twins. One is internal, flowing into external, while here in Tyranny, it's external flowing into the internal, showing how choices made without the ability to reverse them can affect the normal lives of other folks. Now, while this is a new world and you don't see the requisite fantasy races that you may come to expect, we do get beastmen, which are strange werewolf-like creatures that roam the land, basically killing everything, and assorted fantasy tropes that are twisted just enough to give you interest in the heavy lore as you explore. Hell, you can even become pen pals with other evil lords, writing back and forth to learn more about the world. Dear Destro, man, the Baroness is smoking hot. You think she'd go out with me? It's sort of odd, but hey, it's there. Really, when you look at it, Tyranny is the other side of the coin to Pillars. One sort of showing you internal to external, as I said, the other external to internal. And it is a very fascinating dichotomy. Fun factor. You know, Tyranny is a refreshing blend of old and new, offering this unique, if not fully alien blend of living in a world where evil has taken over, and what good a person can or can't do within a machine as complex as an entire evil corporation like this can do. And you get to see that, experience it, and make your own decisions. It doesn't turn the isometric world on its head, but it offers you this unique worldview with a fiction that is heavy in lore and repercussion that really allows you to feel like you made a difference, but in a way different than other RPGs. But while Tyranny is absolutely a blast to play most of the time, it does have some issues here and there, and most notably that's with, again, bugs. While I only had a single crash in the 50 plus hours, the fact is those bugs I mentioned before, everything from the animations to the sounds, are there, and though that stuff can get patched, it hurts it just a little bit. Not a ton, but it's noticeable. In the same vein, a place where the game is really held up is the companions, who I really enjoyed, whether it be Verse, Ebb, or even Lantry. They all had something really unique, even the Beast Woman, and even a character or two that you don't actually get to see or play if you go a different route. The companions were actually pretty cool. So as always, you guys know me, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale, with a deep sale in there as the rent for a PC title. This is obviously a buy. It's a fantastic title with a fantastic amount of gameplay. It offers a really different Mirrors feeling to Pillars of Eternity. It's not going to be for everybody. Its skill systems are a little different. Its combat's a little bit different. But I think everything is there. If there's one thing I could fix here, it would probably be the largeness of some aspects of the HUD, which sort of got in the way as I played. disappointed, but overall, a fantastic title and a great addition to the genre. So that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Patreon or Twitter. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And as always, peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.